Daniel Rafik had driven past the old farmhouse many times in the last 2 years, but he had never once seen anyone standing outside it. The place sat at the far edge of the valley, where the land dipped into a narrow bend. The grass around the house grew freely, tall enough to sway like soft waves. Anyone who looked at the farmhouse from the road felt a strange mix of calm and sadness. It wasn't abandoned, but it looked like it carried memories that held it down. The house belonged to Miriam Faros, a young widow who had lost her husband in an accident. People in town spoke about her with gentle voices. They said she didn't talk much. They said she rarely left her home except when she needed groceries. They said she kept to herself, even though she was still young and capable of more than the lonely life she lived. Daniel didn't know much about her, but he had heard enough to respect her distance. He worked as a traveling repairman, fixing anything from broken pipes to wooden fences and old doors. His clients trusted him because he never asked unnecessary questions and never tried to enter spaces people didn't want to open. That morning, he received a simple message on his phone. Backdoor bolt stuck. Please check. Miriam F. He read it twice, surprised. She rarely contacted anyone. Still, he didn't think too much about it. A stuck bolt was nothing unusual. Many old farmhouses had them. The sun was high when he reached her property. As his truck rolled to a stop, he noticed the silence first. No animals, no movement, only the wind brushing against the wooden walls. He stepped out and walked toward the back of the house. The door there looked older than the rest of the building, its paint faded and peeling. As he lightly knocked, the door opened only a narrow inch, and one eye looked out. Miriam, her voice was soft, almost careful. You came fast. Ah! Daniel nodded. You said the bolt is stuck? She moved aside just enough to let him in. Yes, it won't slide properly. I need it stronger. He entered the kitchen, area clean, simple, quiet. Nothing looked out of place. But the house felt heavy, as if it carried emotions pressed into the walls. The back door bolt was indeed old, but not damaged. He examined it while she stood nearby, arms crossed, watching him without expression. It's still working, he said. But maybe the wood has warped a little. Do you want it replaced? No, she said quickly. I want it tightened, more secure. Her tone was firm, most too firm for such a small request. Daniel raised an eyebrow. If you tighten it too much, it can jam. You'll regret it if you get stuck inside during an emergency. Her lips curved into a faint smirk. Not mocking, not playful, but almost like she expected him to say those words. I won't regret it, she said quietly. He hesitated. People tighten locks for many reasons. Some were practical. Some came from fear. And some came from wanting control in a world that felt unstable. Still, it wasn't his place to question. All right, he said. But let me adjust it properly so it doesn't jam. He took out his tools. While he worked, he sensed her eyes on him constantly. Not suspicious, not unfriendly, just watchful, as if she wasn't used to someone being in her home. What made it feel unsafe? He asked gently. He didn't expect an answer, but he wanted to offer a little comfort. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she stepped closer, took the bolt in her hand and turned it herself, tightening it with surprising force. That's enough, Daniel said quickly. Any more and it may. You'll regret this, he warned lightly, more like a gentle tease than a scolding. But she only smirked again, as if the tight bolt gave her some kind of quiet confidence. Her hand didn't shake. Her eyes didn't shift away. She simply turned it one last time and stepped back. Daniel let out a small breath and examined her work. You tightened it too much, he murmured. I want it like that, she said. It must not open easily. Her voice trembled slightly on the last line, but she quickly straightened her posture. Pretending nothing had slipped, Daniel didn't push. He knew that when people guarded their homes like this, something was behind it: fear, memories, or a feeling they couldn't explain to someone they'd only met twice. He adjusted a few parts to make sure the bolt wouldn't break. The lock now required force to slide, but it wouldn't trap her unless Weatherwood's swelling worsened. All set, he said. Miriam nodded. Not smiling, but her shoulders softened as if one small worry had been lifted. As he packed his tools, he noticed something else. Her window curtains were closed, every one of them. The furniture was placed in ways that blocked direct views of the outside. The house felt less like a home and more like a place someone hid. Inside, he wondered if she had always been this way, or if it began after she lost her husband. "I'll send you the service amount," she said quietly. "No need," he replied. It was a small job. She looked at him with slight confusion, almost suspicion, as if kindness was something she didn't expect from anyone anymore. "You drove all the way," she said softly. "I'll pay." He shook his head. "It's fine. Just call me if the bolt gives any more trouble." She didn't answer. She simply walked to the door and watched him leave, her expression unreadable. As he stepped outside, he noticed the sky turning gray. Clouds gathered quickly over the valley. A storm would arrive by evening. He looked back once and saw Miriam standing in the doorway, still touching the bolt with her fingertips while watching him walk away. The wind blew her shawl lightly. But she didn't step back inside until he reached his truck. Something about the way she lingered at the doorway bothered him, not in a negative way, but in a worrying one. She seemed like someone waiting for something, or someone hiding from something only she understood. On his drive back toward the town, Daniel kept thinking about her smirk. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't even confident. It felt more like a shield, a thin, fragile mask over a deeper feeling. He had seen many people hide their fear behind smiles, jokes, or quiet behavior. Miriam's smirk felt like one of those masks. The valley wind grew stronger. Dust swirled across the road. Tree branches shook wildly. The weather report had mentioned light rain, nothing serious. But the sky now looked darker than expected. Daniel told himself it was just a storm, and Miriam's door would hold fine. Still, a small unease sat in his chest as he drove. Something about her silence, her insistence on a stronger bolt. The way she smirked right before tightening it too much. It all felt like a clue to something she wasn't saying by the time he reached the main road. Rain had already begun tapping against his windshield. He thought of calling her to ask if she needed anything before the rain worsened, but he stopped himself. She hardly knew him. She might misunderstand. Instead, he drove on, telling himself she was safe inside her home, yet he couldn't forget her last expression standing by the door, watching him walk away, as if she feared something outside more than the loneliness inside. That evening, just as the storm fully hit the valley, his phone buzzed with a message, one that instantly made him slow his breath. It was from Miriam. "Do you know how to open a bolt if it gets stuck?" Daniel stared at the screen. He remembered her smirk. He remembered his own warning. "You'll regret this." Now, with the storm roaring outside, he couldn't help but feel she might be regretting it already. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a simple thought whispered, something is wrong in that house. The storm rolled over the valley, with a force stronger than anyone had expected. Dark clouds clustered low, almost touching the tops of the tall pine trees. Lightning flashed again and again, spreading bright white light across the hills. The wind carried dust, leaves, and broken twigs in swirling circles. It was the kind of storm that made people stay home and stay quiet. Daniel drove with both hands tight on the steering wheel. Rain crashed against the windshield, and each drop hit with a loud tapping sound. He had planned to reach the main town before the storm grew worse, but now he wasn't even close. The road was narrow, and the fields on both sides were already turning into pools of muddy water. His phone buzzed again. A second message from Miriam. "The bolt. It is not moving. Can you guide me?" She had written those words carefully, but he could sense worry behind them. He slowed the truck and pulled over near the bend in the road. The wipers worked fast, clearing the water for only a second before more rain replaced it. He typed back, "Is it jammed completely?" The reply came after a long minute. "Yes, I tried many times." Daniel exhaled slowly. He remembered how strongly she had tightened it. He had warned her. She had still insisted. He typed again, Try lifting the door slightly and then slide it. Sometimes that helps. Another minute passed. It's not happening. The wind is shaking the house. I think something is outside. Daniel straightened in his seat. Outside at this time? In this storm? He typed quickly. Are you alone? Are you safe? She replied almost instantly. I don't know. The back of the house. There was a sound. Daniel stared out into the dark, violent night. He imagined her standing by the door, scared, but trying to appear strong. That smirk she gave earlier, now he understood. It wasn't confidence. It was her way of pretending she didn't fear anything. He started the truck again. He turned around. The road back to her house was nearly invisible under the storm's rage. Branches cracked and fell. The truck's tires slipped once, making him grip the wheel harder. His heart beat faster with every sharp turn. She shouldn't be alone right now. He murmured. When he reached the valley dip, he saw something that made him stop. A large tree had fallen across the narrow path leading toward the town. He couldn't go forward even if he wanted to. Miriam's house is the closest shelter, he whispered to himself. He switched directions and headed straight back toward her property. The farmhouse came into view only when the lightning lit up the sky again. The windows were dark, and the whole structure seemed to shake with the wind. Rain hit the metal roof loudly. It's like someone knocking again and again without stopping. He parked the truck close to the porch and ran toward the back door. Covering his face with his arm against the heavy rain, Miriam. He shouted over the storm. No answer. He knocked hard. The sound of his fist against the door was almost drowned by the storm. Miriam, it's Daniel. Open the door. He heard movement inside. A few seconds later, her voice reached him through the wooden door. It's stuck. I can't open it. Step back, he shouted. Let me try from outside. He grabbed the bolt from his side and tried sliding it. It didn't move even an inch. It was jammed tightly exactly like he had warned. He pushed harder, using his shoulder for support. The metal didn't budge. Rain poured over him, soaking his clothes completely. But he didn't stop. Inside, he could hear her breathing fast, as if she was standing close to the door waiting for it to open. It won't move, Daniel yelled. Let me try another way. He ran to the front door, which was slightly shielded from the storm by a small porch. He knocked loudly. After a few seconds, he heard footsteps. The front door opened a small gap. Miriam's face appeared, pale, eyes wide. Come inside, she said urgently. He stepped in, and she closed the door quickly, locking it with a small latch. The moment he entered, he noticed how cold the house felt. The curtains were closed, and only a single lamp glowed weakly in the living room. Miriam looked shaken. She held her shawl tightly around her shoulders. You're drenched, she whispered. Don't worry about that. Are you okay? He asked, brushing water from his hair. I heard sounds, she said softly, from the back of the house. I thought it was the wind, but then I saw shadows through the curtain. Did you see anyone clearly? No, but I felt someone was there. Daniel took a slow breath. The storm was wild, and strange shapes could appear easily, but he trusted her instinct. She lived alone. She was used to the silence. If she felt something was different, she was probably right. Let me check the windows, he said. No, don't open them, she said quickly. The wind is too strong. He nodded and looked around. The wooden walls creaked now and then. The lamps flickered. Why didn't you call someone else? A neighbor? He asked. I don't like troubling people, she whispered. And neighbors, they don't come here anymore. Daniel didn't ask why. He could guess. People didn't know how to help a grieving widow living alone. Instead of trying, they simply stayed away, thinking they were giving her space. The house trembled again as wind hit it hard. A loud crack echoed outside, like another tree breaking. Miriam flinched. Daniel stepped closer. You're safe, he said gently. I'm here now. Nothing will happen. She looked at him for a moment, truly looked. Her eyes softened, and her shoulders dropped slightly as if she trusted his words. more than she trusted her own thoughts. He moved to the back door inside the kitchen. The bolt had jammed exactly where she had tightened it. "I told you earlier," he said with a small, calm smile. "If you tighten it too much," she sighed and closed her eyes. "I know. You warned me." "It's okay," he said. "I'll try opening it from inside." He tried sliding it. It didn't move. He tried again. "Still nothing? You really forced it, didn't you?" he said. She lowered her head, embarrassed. "I didn't want it to open easily." "It's fine," he said. "But now the wood has swollen from the rain and wind, so it's stuck even more." She held her shawl tighter and said nothing. Daniel examined the hinges and the side panel. "I can fix it," he said, "but not right now. The storm is too strong, and if I open this door, the wind might break something." Miriam nodded slowly. "Then don't open it." Lightning flashed again, and a roar of thunder followed. The lamp flickered harder this time. "I should check the power box," Daniel said. "It's outside," Miriam whispered. "All right. Then we stay inside and use the lamps." He brought the lamp closer to the living area. The warm light made the house feel a little less lonely. For a while, they sat quietly. The storm filled the silence with its loud voice whined pushing. Rain slamming, thunder breaking the sky. After several minutes, Miriam finally spoke. "I tightened the bolt because of something that happened 3 nights ago." Daniel turned to her. She was staring at the lamp flame, not wanting to meet his eyes yet. "There was a knock," she said. "Soft at first, then again. When I went to check, no one was there. The next night it happened again. And the 3rd night, did you see anyone?" "No, but I felt someone had been standing there." "You didn't call anyone?" She shook her head slowly. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." Daniel leaned back slightly. Her fear made sense now. Her smirk earlier wasn't pride, it was protection. She used it to hide the shaking in her heart. "Then today," she continued, "you came, and I wanted the bolt stronger. I didn't want that knocking again." He nodded gently. "I understand." They listened to the storm again. The house walls creaked. But Daniel felt calmer now that he understood the situation. "You're not silly for being afraid," he said. "Anyone living alone here would feel the same." She looked at him. He looked at him, really looked with eyes full of mixed emotions. Fear. Embarrassment, relief. "Thank you for coming back," she whispered. He gave her a light smile. "A storm like this? You shouldn't be alone." The lamp flickered once more and then went dark. The whole house fell into deep darkness. Miriam gasped softly. Daniel reached for the lamp, tapped it, but it didn't turn on. "The power is gone," he said calmly. "Don't worry. I'll light a candle." Found a matchbox near the counter and lit a candle. Warm light filled the space, softer than the lamp, but comforting. Miriam's face looked peaceful in the candlelight, though her eyes still reflected worry. "You can stay here until the storm passes," she said quietly. "The roads are not safe." "I planned to," he said. "A tree blocked the path. I couldn't go back." They both sat near the candle. There was a quietness between them, not uncomfortable, not tense, just a people finding calm in the middle of a storm, for the first time in years. Miriam spoke openly about her life, her husband, her loneliness, her quiet routines. Daniel listened without interrupting. He didn't offer unnecessary advice. He simply let her speak. By the time she finished, the candle flame had grown small, but the heaviness inside her heart seemed lighter. "I don't know why I'm telling you all this," she whispered. Daniel smiled a little. "Maybe because storms make people speak honestly." She gave the first true smile he had seen on her face. Hours passed. The storm outside didn't calm, but inside the small farmhouse, something else did. The tension faded. The distance between them grew smaller. A silent understanding formed as the candle flickered and the wind roared. Miriam realized she didn't feel alone any more, and Daniel, who had only come to fix a bolt, began to understand that the widow who smirked at her own fears had a much heavier story behind her. Silence. The night had changed something between them. Neither of them realized it yet, but the storm was not. The only thing approaching When the first light of morning touched the valley, the storm was already gone. The sky had cleared so suddenly that it felt unreal, as if the night's violence had been only a bad dream. The wet earth shone gently in the early sun, and the trees stood quietly again, their leaves dripping with leftover rain. Inside the farmhouse, Daniel slowly opened his eyes. He had fallen asleep in the wooden chair near the lamp table sometime after midnight. The candle had burned out long ago. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he saw Mary Ann in the next chair, wrapped in her shawl, head leaned slightly to the side, asleep but peaceful. He stood quietly, not wanting to wake her. The storm had taken a lot from her: fear, exhaustion, and hours of silent worry. She deserved the calm that morning brought. He walked toward the window and pulled the curtain slightly. Soft sunlight entered the room, brightening the space that had looked so dark the night before. After a few moments, Miriam stirred. She lifted her head slowly and blinked as she saw him standing near the window. "You're awake early?" she said softly. "The storm's gone?" he replied. "I thought I should check outside before the sun dries the ground too much." Her eyes lowered for a moment, as if remembering the fear she felt the previous night. "I'm glad it's over," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Let me look around the house. If someone came near the door, we might find something?" She hesitated. "Do you think there really was someone?" "Maybe," Daniel said honestly. "Or maybe it was the wind playing tricks. But we'll only know if we look." She wrapped her shawl tighter and stood up. "I'll come with you." "No," he said gently. "Stay inside for now. Let me check first." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Daniel stepped outside. The air smelled fresh, like wet soil and pine leaves. The grass was still heavy with water. He walked toward the back of the house first. Where Miriam had heard the knocking on previous nights, the mud near the back steps held marks clear. Deep, fresh dot footprints. They weren't perfect, because the storm had damaged some shapes, but enough remained to show that someone had stepped there last night. Someone had stood near her door while the storm raged. Daniel crouched and touched the ground gently. The prints were not from an animal. They were human. He followed them a few steps, but they vanished quickly into the washed-out mud farther away. Whoever had been there didn't stay long. He stood thinking. Who would come to a widow's home at night during a storm? Why would anyone knock and then disappear? Nothing made sense. After checking the area thoroughly, he walked back to the front of the house. The fallen branches, leaves, and broken twigs were everywhere. The path to the road was half blocked by a huge branch. When he returned inside, Miriam stood near the door, waiting silently. "You found something?" she said, reading his expression. Daniel nodded. "Yes, there were footprints." Her breath caught for a moment. Her hand tightened on the edge of her shawl. "So, it wasn't just my imagination." "No," Daniel said gently. "You weren't imagining anything." She walked toward the kitchen and sat down at the wooden table. Her shoulders lowered, as if a heavy truth had finally settled. The fear she had been trying to hide for days was real. "Do you know who it might be?" Daniel asked. She shook her head slowly. "No one comes here. No one visits. I don't speak to many people." Daniel thought for a moment. "It could be someone passing through, someone who got lost." She looked up. 3 nights in a row?" He stayed quiet. She was right. It didn't feel like an accident. After a long pause, Miriam said softly, "My husband. Before he passed, he had some disagreements with someone in town, but that was years ago. I don't think it's connected." Daniel didn't ask for details. If she wanted to tell him, she would. "Let's check the back door," he said. They went together to the kitchen. The bolt was still jammed tightly. Miriam touched it lightly. "I shouldn't have tightened it like that." Daniel smiled a little. "It's okay. You did what you thought was safest." She looked at him. "But you warned me, and I still forced it." "You were afraid," he said softly. "Fear makes people act stronger than they feel." Her eyes lowered. She didn't deny it. Daniel grabbed his tools and kneeled near the bolt. "I'll replace the whole lock system today. A new bolt, a stronger frame, and a reinforcement plate. You'll feel safer." She watched him quietly as he worked. He loosened the old bolt, removed the metal piece, and checked the wood. The storm had made the wood swell, which made the lock even tighter. "This will need sanding," said, running a finger along the edge. "But it can be fixed." Miriam stood nearby, not speaking, but her presence was steady. She wasn't acting distant anymore. She wasn't hiding behind silence or that thin smirk she used to protect herself. She looked like someone willing to trust again. He worked slowly and carefully. The process took time, removing old screws, placing new ones, adjusting the frame, and testing the reinforcement piece. Miriam brought him a towel to dry his hands. He smiled gratefully and nodded. "You don't have to do all this for free," she said quietly. "It's not about money," he replied. "You needed help. I'm here." Her eyes softened again. When he finally finished, he tested the door. It slid smoothly, firm enough to feel safe, but not so tight that it would jam. "Try it," he said. Miriam hesitated, then placed her hand on the bolt. She slid it forward. It moved gently and made a clean click. A small smile appeared on her face, genuine and soft. "It feels strong," she said. "It is," Daniel replied. They walked back to the living room. The morning light filled the house, making everything look different from last night. The place felt warmer, lighter, less lonely. Miriam sat down and exhaled deeply. "Thank you for everything." Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to thank me." "I do," she insisted softly. "If you hadn't come last night, I don't know how I would have managed." He sat across from her. "You're stronger than you think." Her eyes moved to the window. Outside, the sunlight played across the wet fields. "Strength feels different when you're alone." She whispered. Daniel understood those words. Loneliness could make even simple things feel heavy. "You're not alone now," he said gently. She looked at him with surprise, then relief. Not sudden, not overwhelming, slow, like dawn breaking after a long night. For years, her house had been closed to the world. Now, for the first time, someone sat inside with her, listening, helping, caring without expecting anything in return. She touched the edge of the table lightly. "Will you check on the house again later? To make sure everything stays okay?" Daniel smiled. "Of course, I'll come by whenever I'm in the valley." A soft calm settled between them. They didn't speak for several minutes. They didn't need to. Outside, the wet grass sparkled. The storm had passed. And so had something inside Miriam's heart. She wasn't healed completely. But she wasn't trapped behind a bolted door anymore. Daniel stood to leave. "I should go clear the road and check on some others in town." She followed him to the door with slow steps. When he stepped outside, she called softly, "Daniel." He turned. Her eyes held a warmth he hadn't seen before, quiet trust built slowly through fear. Conversation and the long stormed night. "I didn't regret tightening the bolt," she said. "Not because it made me feel safe, but because it brought you here." His expression softened. "And now," she added, looking at the new lock, "I think I can start opening doors again." Daniel nodded gently. "You will," she smiled, small, real, and bright in the morning sun, as he walked toward his truck. She stayed at the doorway, watching him going out with fear this time. But with hope, the farmhouse no longer looked like a lonely place. It looked like the beginning of something new. And Miriam, the widow who once hid behind a locked door, had finally taken her first quiet step toward living again.